The air inside the shelter was hot and heavy, filled with the sharp smell of smoke and iron. Every step deeper into the building made the sound of claws on steel echo louder. Dragons of different sizes pressed against their reinforced cages, some hissing, others pacing back and forth restlessly. This was not a place for children's fantasies. It was a prison for creatures considered too wild, too dangerous to be free. Myra rolled her wheelchair forward slowly, the electric hum soft, against the chorus of growls. At only 17, she had grown used to people staring at her. But this time, it was not people. It was dragons. Their golden eyes glared at her with mistrust, their hot breaths spreading across the hall like waves of heat. She did not flinch. Beside her walked Director Hay-1, a tall woman with tired eyes and broad shoulders. Her hand hovered close to Myra's chair, as if she expected danger to strike at any second. "Myra," she said firmly, "I need you to understand. This shelter is not safe. These dragons are not like the ones in your storybooks. Some were rescued from illegal fights, others from cruel owners. They only know pain and fear. That makes them violent." Myra nodded, but did not slow her wheels. "I know, Director. You told me already, but I want to see them. All of them, even the ones everyone avoids." Director Hay-1 hesitated. Her gaze moved down the hall to a large cage, with double steel bars and burn marks still fresh along the walls. "There is one you should not approach. Enclosure 6, the dragon inside. His name is Reagan. He nearly destroyed this shelter last winter. 3 handlers were injured. Some say he cannot be tamed at all." As if hearing his own name, a deep rumble rolled from that very cage. The air grew hotter, prickling against Myra's skin. She turned her head and saw him. Reagan was larger than the others, his scales burning crimson like molten rock. His horns curved sharply back, like blades forged for war. His eyes glowed bright gold, unblinking and intense. Even from across the hall, the heat radiating from his body was like standing too close to a fire pit. Most visitors never came near him. Most handlers never stayed long. But Myra did not move away. She slowly wheeled forward. "Stop, Director." Hay-1 raised her hand sharply. "He will lash out. He always does." But Myra's hands rested lightly on her wheels. Her gaze remained steady. "He's not lashing out now," she said softly. "He's watching me." And he was. Reagan's glowing eyes followed her every move. His chest rose and fell with deep breaths, not of anger, but of curiosity. Myra tilted her head, her hair catching in the faint breeze of his breath. "Hello," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the noise of the shelter. Director Hay-1 muttered under her breath, ready to push Myra back, when something unexpected happened. The dragon shifted closer. The sound he made was not a growl, but a low rumbling note that filled the space like distant thunder. His nostrils flared, pulling. In her scent, "You smell the air, don't you?" Myra murmured, half to herself. Not fire, not fear, just wind. For a long moment, dragon and girl simply stared at one another. Then, without warning, Reagan pushed his massive snout through the bars. The handlers nearby gasped, some stepping back in fear, expecting fire. But no fire came. Instead, a warm, gentle breath washed over Myra's face, ruffling her hair. The smell was not sharp sulfur, but soft cedar smoke. Myra's lips curved in the faintest smile. Director Hay-1 froze, her hand halfway raised. Her voice shook. I don't believe this." Then came a sound no one in that shelter had ever heard from the dragon before. A deep, resonant purr. It rolled through the hall, silencing every other dragon in their cages. For the first time, the entire shelter was quiet. All eyes turned to Reagan, who pressed closer against the bars, his golden gaze fixed only on the girl in the chair. Mira lifted her hand slowly. "May I?" she asked, glancing toward the director. Hay-One stared, caught between fear and disbelief, then gave the faintest nod. Myra reached forward, her fingers brushing against the dragon's warm snout. His scales pulsed with heat, alive like a heartbeat. Instead of snapping, Reagan leaned into her palm. His lids lowered, softening his fierce eyes. "You're not angry," Mira whispered, stroking him gently. "You're just hurt." From behind, handlers whispered in shock. One muttered, "He tried to kill me last week." Another said, "This is impossible." But Myra did not look away. Her voice was calm. "They were afraid of you," she said to the dragon. "So you thought you had to be afraid of them too." Something flickered in his gaze, something more than instinct. And then, before everyone's eyes, Reagan lowered himself fully to the ground, his chin pressed flat against the steel floor, exposing his neck, the most vulnerable part of his body. The staff gasped aloud. Director Hay-One's voice was almost a whisper. "I have worked here 15 years. I have never seen anything like this." Myra's hand stayed on him, her touch steady. She smiled faintly. "Everyone needs someone who doesn't flinch." In that moment, the wild dragon who had burned half a shelter bowed to a girl who could not stand, and the world inside that prison of steel shifted forever. The shelter had never been so quiet. After Reagan lowered himself before Mira, the silence stretched across the long hall like a spell. Handlers who had once avoided his cage now pressed closer, their faces pale with disbelief. None of them could believe that the most violent dragon in their care had just bowed to a human girl. Director Hay-One stood frozen. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no words came out. Her hands trembled at her sides. She had seen dragons fight, burn, and destroy, but never had she seen one surrender without force. Myra sat calmly in her wheelchair, her hand still resting against Reagan's snout. She could feel the heat pulsing through his scales, not sharp and burning, but warm and steady, like the beat of a heart. She smiled faintly. "You're not a monster," she whispered. "You've just been waiting for someone to listen." The dragon's golden eyes half closed as if he understood. His body, once coiled with rage, relaxed against the steel floor. A sound like thunder rumbled deep in his chest, but it was not anger. It was trust. One of the handlers, a young man named Jiho, whispered, "This cannot be real. Last week he nearly burned my arm off. How is this happening?" Another handler, older and scarred across his cheek, shook his head slowly. "He sees something in her we don't, something we missed." Mira glanced at them, but did not let her hand leave the dragon. "He's not dangerous. He's lonely. You all feared him, so he only knew fear. But fear is not the same as hate." Director Hay-One finally found her voice. "Myra, I don't understand how you're doing this. For years, we tried training, restraints, even medicines. Nothing worked. And now, he lets you touch him." Mira looked up, her gaze steady. "Maybe you were trying to make him obey." "I'm not asking him for that. I'm just here." Her words struck the staff deeply. They exchanged glances, uneasy but touched by her simple truth. The girl in the chair, someone the world might see as fragile, had done what all their strength and skill had failed to do. Reagan let out another deep purr, louder this time, filling the hall with vibration. One by one, the other dragons shifted. In their cages, their restless movements slowed, their growls faded. It was as if the bond between Myra and Reagan rippled through the shelter, calming even the others. The staff murmured in awe. "Look at them. Even the others are quiet." For a few minutes, the shelter felt almost peaceful. Myra stroked the dragon's snout gently, moving her fingers along the ridges of his horns. He leaned into her touch, eyes closing halfway, like a great beast sinking into rest. "You've been hurt," Myra whispered softly. "I know what that feels like. People look at me and only see weakness. They think I cannot do things. But I can. And you too. You are not broken." Her words carried through the hall. Some handlers lowered their heads, ashamed. They had only seen Reagan as a weapon or a danger. None of them had ever spoken to him with kindness. Then, to everyone's shock, Reagan lowered himself even further, pressing his chin against the ground, completely exposing the vulnerable underside of his neck. It was the ultimate act of submission, something no one had thought possible. Gasps filled the air. Ji-ho stumbled back, covering his mouth. Director Hae-won's voice cracked as she said, 15 years. 15 years in this place, and I have never seen a dragon do this. Not once, not for anyone. Myra reached forward, her hand brushing the warm, unarmored skin of his neck. She felt the gentle rise and fall of his breathing, a pulse of life beneath her palm. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She only whispered, "Everyone needs someone who doesn't flinch." The handlers could not look away. Some had tears in their eyes as well. This was no trick, no illusion. It was trust, pure and real. Finally, after a long moment, Mira wheeled herself back a little. Reagan lifted his head, following her retreat. His golden eyes filled with something almost mournful. A low rumble echoed from his chest, a sound of longing, as if he did not want her to leave. Director Hae-won hurried to Myra's side in the hall. Her face was pale with shock, her voice shaky. Would you come back tomorrow?" "I think he wants you to." Mira smiled softly, wiping at her cheek. "I will only come back if he wants me to." From down the corridor, the answer came. A deep, unmistakable rumble rolled from Reagan's chest, filling the building with his voice. The dragon had made his choice. And with that, the shelter was never the same again. The story of Mira and the dragon spread quickly beyond the walls of the shelter. At first, it was only the staff who whispered about it in shock, unsure if anyone would believe them. But then a handler recorded a short video Myra stroking Reagan's snout while the dragon purred like thunder. When that video reached the city, it was impossible to keep the secret any longer. Within days, people were gathering outside the shelter gates. Reporters demanded answers. Officials sent inspectors. Crowds of curious citizens pressed forward, all asking the same question. How had a paralyzed girl calmed the most violent dragon in the facility? Inside, the atmosphere had changed. Each morning, Mira returned, wheeling herself quietly down the unwilling hall. Every time, Reagan's deep rumble greeted her before she even reached his enclosure. The once fearsome dragon pressed close to the bars, his golden eyes following her with a devotion that shook the staff to their core. Other dragons watched, too. Some who had once snarled endlessly now sat calmer, their gazes shifting toward Myra, as though they understood something was happening that even humans did not. The shelter, once filled with noise and chaos, became strangely quiet whenever she was present. But not everyone was pleased. A group of city officials arrived one morning, their voices sharp with suspicion. "This is dangerous," one of them declared, pointing at Reagan's enclosure. "This dragon is a killer. 3 handlers bear scars because of him. Are we to forget that because a girl in a chair touched his snout?" Director Hae-won stood stiffly, torn between her duty and what she had witnessed. She replied carefully, "He has not harmed anyone since Myra arrived. In fact, he has calmed more than any method we ever tried." The officials argued, demanding Reagan be put down before he hurt anyone else. But Myra wheeled forward, her voice steady though her heart pounded. "You only see what he was forced to be," she said. You don't see what he is becoming. You look at me the same way. You think because I cannot walk, I cannot fight, I cannot be strong. But strength is not always in the body. Sometimes it is in the heart. He has it. I see it. Why can't you?" Her words silenced the room for a moment. The officials said nothing, but the handlers, who had once feared Reagan the most, lowered their heads in agreement. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. Then came the moment that changed everything. One afternoon, a malfunction sparked in the shelter system. Sparks rained from the ceiling, alarms screamed, and one of the fire gates slammed shut with a heavy crash. A handler named Jiho was trapped inside Reagan's enclosure. Smoke filled the room, and the metal glowed hot under the spreading flame. Everyone panicked. "He'll kill him," someone shouted, struggling with the emergency lock. But before they could act, Reagan moved. The dragon did not attack. Instead, he wrapped his massive body around Jiho, shielding him from falling debris and fire. His wings covered the handler like a shelter of living steel. Jiho cowered at first, certain his end had come, but then realized the dragon was protecting him. When the flames were brought under control and the locks finally opened, Reagan stepped back unhurt, leaving Jiho alive and shaken but unharmed. The shelter erupted in disbelief. For the first time, the dragon they had feared had saved a life. Jiho stumbled forward, eyes wide with tears. He protected me," he whispered. "He could have burned me alive. But he didn't. He saved me." The news spread even faster than before. Now the city no longer saw only fear in the dragon. They saw hope. Crowds gathered with signs that read, "Let them live." Children held drawings of Mira and Reagan side by side. The officials who once demanded his death grew quiet. Unable to argue against the truth everyone had seen, Mira returned once more, wheeling forward until she reached his enclosure. Reagan lowered his head, pressing his snout gently against the bars. She smiled, her eyes wet with tears. "You didn't just save Jiho. You saved yourself. They can't call you a monster anymore." Director Hay-1 stood behind her, her voice thick with emotion. "In all my years, I thought humans had nothing left to teach dragons. But today, I see it is the other way. Or maybe it is both." Mira touched Reagan's warm scales and whispered, "Everyone needs someone who doesn't flinch." And with that, the shelter, the city, and perhaps even the world began to change. For the first time, humans did not look at dragons as beasts to be caged, but as beings who could feel trust, loyalty, and even love. And it all began with one girl in a wheelchair who refused to be afraid.